In the meantime, my next guest is Dr. Jonathan Mitchley, botanist extraordinaire. In fact, he's Associate Professor of Field Botany at the University of Reading. And he loves plants so much that he's the organiser of the annual Botanists University Challenge. It's taking place in the next couple of weeks. I wonder if they'll have it on a double-decker sort of, contestant panel thing, like they do in University Challenge. Apparently it's a camera trick, how dare they? Anyway, apparently I can ask him pretty much anything about plants. OK, Jonathan, hello to you.
Hello, Phil.
Why roses then on Valentine's Day then?
Oh God, why roses? Well, it's an interesting question, because if you stick your nose into a rose, you're actually investigating the private parts of that rose. So maybe that's the connection. But also they're very beautiful, as many plants are. The ones that we usually get for Valentine's Day don't actually smell. They've been bred for the blooms, multiple blooms, so they kind of they don't always have the lovely aroma that we associate with roses. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think they're beautiful, and they're associated with the themes of Valentine's, I would say.
Yes, nice red rose for red hearts and those sort of things. So it makes perfect sense. OK then, Jonathan. So Botanists University Challenge, I didn't even know there was one.
Well, there you go. It's growing, so everyone will know about it soon. It's actually Botanical University Challenge, and you can find us online, botanicaluniversitychallenge.co.uk, if you're looking to watch it on the live stream. We started it back in 2016 at Kew. Then we had just 5 teams, and it was live. It's grown ever since. Last year we were forced online, as many things were, because of COVID, and we got 15 teams. This year we have 18 teams, and that's amazing. 18 teams of keen plant-aware students, and the excitement is building. In fact, the excitement has built today, because we've been able to announce that amongst the prizes for the winners and runners-up will be copies of the BBC Green Planet signed by Sir David Attenborough. So that's great. But yes, it's really it's a quiz that's designed to celebrate plants, which Attenborough calls our green allies, and I'd certainly agree with that. But it's also to celebrate students who are interested in plants, encourage a better understanding of plants, and also the career pathways involving plants, what plants do for us, and also to involve our audience. We're selling tickets on our Eventbrite link. They're going pretty well. And it's a quiz that the audience can enjoy, because there's lots of questions about plants which people will say, oh, I know that, as well as some mystifying ones.
Well, it's nice to know, be it your own students at the University of Reading or students with fellow lecturers who have actually got students who've been paying attention when it comes to Botanical University Challenge. And it's universities across the country as well getting involved. Well,
we go all the way from, it's difficult. I'm reluctant to read them all out because it'll take ages, but we go all the way from Plymouth, through the Eden Project, Reading, Cambridge, through up Manchester, Liverpool, right up into Scotland, Edinburgh and Glasgow, and across to Ireland. We've got, for the first time, Ireland involved, we've got Galway.
Excellent. All right, so
18 in total, so apologies to the ones I missed off. But
well, I'm sure that they will be coming back to you, and saying, why didn't you mention us? But more importantly, how are Reading students doing? Because they're doing so, pretty well at University Challenge, are they?
They're doing quite well at University Challenge. Botanical University Challenge, they've done very well. In the past, Reading actually won the first contest, 2016. But basically, I would say it's easy to say this, but it's not so much about the winning, though that's really important. It's about the enthusiasm, the excitement that we can generate in relation to the green stuff. And all that it does for us, from being very, very beautiful through to giving us food. In fact, without plants, we'd be dead. And in fact, however much you might like your pet animals, we can't actually say that about animals. But without plants, we would literally be dead. So we owe them a lot. And this Botanical University Challenge is a celebration of that.
Botany, always been a big interest?
For me, it has. And this is a question I always ask students, even those who are not particularly plant aware to start with. When did you not get interested in plants? For me, it was as a youngster at school. I had a great biology teacher. He was a zoologist, but he tolerated me. It was always the plants, and I put that down to genes. My grandfather was a professional gardener on a big estate. Pretty sure it's in my genes, and that makes sense. Why wouldn't we have a gene for loving plants, because they do so much for us? It doesn't mean everyone will, but I think there's definitely many people who are just inherently in love with plants, and then there's others that fall in love. It's very Valentine's Day appropriate, I would say. Love at first sight and love that's developed over time.
Yes, of course, yes, because you've been involved in it, and yes, you are a botanist extraordinaire. Most common question you get asked?
The most common, can you heal my houseplant? That's the most common question I get asked, but I might get also asked, what's the biggest plant, what's the smallest plant? And the thing about, there's so many things about plants. I mean, we could go on all day. I'm hoping you've got me on all day, because I've got, there's plenty to say about plants. But they span huge ranges. So you've got, if you think about the leaves of plants, you mentioned foliage earlier. You've got a little plant called wolfia, which is basically a speck. It's a little pondweed, and you go right up to the biggest, and there are lots of contenders for the biggest, but I'm going to pick one, which is a beautiful plant called Victoria amazonica. It's the giant water lily, and those of you who've been watching David Attenborough's Green Planet will have seen it. It's that amazing scene there where you've got these huge stalks of the water lily coming up, like jaws through the water, and then these enormous leaves. And there's some recent research that's been published by Chris Thorogood, who's one of the chairs of our contest on Wednesday, the first day. He's from Oxford Botanical Gardens, and he's published research on how it is they can be so big and why they are so big. And they're glorious. The giant water lily, Victoria amazonica. Check it out.
And also old as well. I was hearing someone talking about a 9,500-year-old tree.
Yes, absolutely. And we can go more than that. We can do better than that. The wonderful thing about plants, and this is something that David Attenborough did actually say in one of the run-ups to the Green Planet, was that they do actually move. But they do everything. They do all the things that they have to do to stay alive, so that they will actually move around. They will obviously find mates, and they will grow and they will reproduce. But they do it on their own timescales and in their own ways. And that actually, the way plants grow means that they can, if they're of a particular type, they can live almost indefinitely, almost, I would say, infinitely. Though not all plants, of course. Some plants are programmed to live for a year and then die, sort of weedy plants, because they'll just produce the seeds and then carry on the next year. Others will just continue as a perennial plant, and I think we saw a nice example of the creosote bush in the desert Green Planet that David Attenborough went back to, and it grows very, 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 very slowly. There are trees. There's a pine tree that I'm not quite sure gets to 9,000 years. But then the other wonderful thing about plants is that they can clone themselves. So they can actually produce a new plant, genetically identical, which can then carry on the genetic line. So there's a clone of trees, which I think is in California, which I think is believed to be about 40,000 years old. The clone, not the individual stems, but the actual clone. So plants really are record breakers, and part of this is because they do all the things they need to do to be alive, but they do it in their own way and on their own time scales.
Impressive. That really is quite something. And Jonathan, you were talking about trees there and their age and how they sort of live their own life and do their own thing in their own way, and they communicate with each other as well. How do they do that?
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing, which we've only kind of beginning to learn about, because if we go back to Linnaeus, the famous botanist and the person who originated really the naming of plants and animals, he thought that plants could do all the things that animals did, but they couldn't feel or communicate. But actually, I mean, it was a long time ago. He was wrong. The way they do this, and we are really just beginning to appreciate this, is via their roots very often, but it's also through the air, via chemicals. So they communicate, it's essentially chemical messages. And various things have been written on this. Some of it's a little bit overblown, but there is absolutely no doubt that these chemicals can go from the roots of the plant into fungal hyphae. Now, fungal hyphae is the underground parts of mushrooms and toadstools. And actually, if we think of a forest or a grassland, we think about the plants above ground. But actually, what's more important in many ways is the soil and the underground part. So we've got roots and we've got these fungal hyphae intermingling in structures called mycorrhizae, which are these bits of the fungi which are intermingled with the plant roots, and it means that chemicals that come from one plant can move along these fungal hyphae into another plant. And one of the really interesting ways that works is that a plant that's being attacked, whether it's a tree that's being attacked maybe by invertebrate larvae, moth larvae or whatever, or whether it's a grass that's being chomped by an animal, those chemical messages can tell the other plants around, watch out. And how can a plant respond? How can a plant stop being attacked? It can't move and run away like an animal. What it does is it accumulates certain chemicals which may be toxic particularly to invertebrates. I think you'd struggle for, so these communications can help plants defend themselves from attack. These messages pass through, and this can be herbaceous plants, this can be trees and shrubs. And as I say, we're just beginning to understand that. There's this concept of what's called the wood wide web, which is well worth Googling. It was mentioned on Green Planet, I think, but it's this communication between fungi and plants. And one of the things that I always tell my students, because I'm a botanist, obviously I think plants are the best things since sliced bread, and bread's a plant, of course, plant derivative. But actually the point of ecology, the point of our Green Planet is that it's plants and animals and microbes, and I'm hoping the next big landmark documentary will actually look at the way all these organisms are joined up together in the ecosystem, because actually the understanding of that ecology is really where we need to be for dealing with some of the really serious environmental challenges facing us. So plants, animals and microbes can all contribute to protecting us from climate change, biodiversity loss through the so-called nature-based solutions. Nature is plants, animals and microbes all together.
It's incredible. It's that sort of concept.
That's the right word.
Because it's that concept of walking through a wood or seeing one of those sort of snowy mountainsides with a load of Christmas trees, and they're all having a conversation with each other. They're communicating with each other, and you don't think of it that way, but it is. I think it sort of changes your view of plants, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and we have to be careful not to overstate it, but I think it is an important way to think about it, because it does make us see plants in a different light. Just the same as the time-lapse does on the time-lapse photography on Green Planet. And I think that's really a window, that's a door into an understanding. And it's one of the reasons perhaps that plants have lagged a bit behind animals in sort of popular culture. But actually, if you begin to, I've seen kids entranced by the Green Planet, and if you begin to see plants in that different way, both in terms of the communication, in terms of the movement, in terms of their strategies for survival, that world of wonder, that green world of wonder, I think really can take root literally. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm really pleased that the BBC have done the Green Planet. But Botanical University Challenge, in its own more modest way, I hope is contributing to that renaissance really of plant awareness.
One quick final thing, especially when it comes to your speciality, which is plant identification. But if you are walking along a riverbank, and at certain times of the year it can get quite weedy, and a lot of it is stinging nettles and things like that. But even if it's a stinging nettle, a basic stinging nettle, do you still get a buzz from seeing that grow?
What a nice question. Absolutely. I mean, I think my way into plants was that they're beautiful, but I appreciate also how important they are as well. But I can get. I mean, I've made a short video about nettles, because you can actually eat nettle leaves. You've just got to do it the right way. They've got these nasty stinging hairs. But what's not to love about the fact that this plant, which cannot move in human timescales, actually has these stinging hairs with chemicals in them, which will actually stop things eating it. It can't run away. That's what it does as its defense. And how amazing is that? And it's just the lowly common stinging nettle. So think of all the other stories that we can get from plants which are more exotic. I really, really think that the common plants can give us a huge understanding, obviously fascinating, exotic, weird and wonderful plants too. But a common plant like a nettle, like a dandelion, like a daisy, they can tell us lots too.
Really good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Jonathan Mitchley, a botanist extraordinaire, and a pleasure. I'm sure we'll talk again. Associate Professor of Field Botany at the University of Reading. It's BBC Radio Berkshire.